I think the Utah Utes have a chance to be really good this year. And if want to be, the secondary has to be elite. The good news, they got the guys in the room to once again be a dominant unit on the back end.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. I'm JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined by one of the co-hosts of the Preferred Walk-Ons college football show, Dalton Wasserman, back with us here. We got a fun show today, talking really a lot of the positions that Utah has, how we think they're going to be, also where we think Utah should be ranked. We're going to start with the secondary in a moment, but first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code Locked On, all caps, no spaces, to get $10 when you trade $10. Dalton, if Utah wants to be elite in the Big 12, I think they need to have one of the better secondaries in the conference. The good news is I think they're set up to do so. I really like Elijah Scooby Davis coming back. I think he's in for a big year at cornerback. And they've added some other guys, whether it's a James Chenault that I really like from South Florida. I think he's ready to step in and step up. And a Rock Caldwell returning, a community college guy, played seldom last year. I think he's in for a big role with this team too. Elijah Reed coming over from Akron, I thought was a really good get for them in the cornerback room. And safety-wise, the group of whether it's Jackson Benny, who's gotten a lot bigger, which I think is big because he struggled with tackling at times last year. Nate Ritchie back fully healthy. Rabbit Evans fully healthy. Even a Nate Tillman is an extra guy. I think outside of maybe Devin Dampier, the secondary could end up being the strength of this Utah team. I have high hopes for this group.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you look at Morgan Scalley's defense and what he's able to do, especially with a lot of man-to-man coverage and the way he likes to get aggressive, it's good, especially to be good out there at the cornerback spot, right? With Elijah Reed, with Elijah Davis, with Chenault, like you mentioned. I think when you have that sort of depth and you can match up with most, if not all of the teams, especially in the Big 12, and there's a few high-flying offenses in the Big 12, when you can handle your business on the back end, it really keeps you in games and then allows you to control the pace, right? It feels like this Utah team is going to continue the tradition of trying to control the pace of games, run the football, get out ahead of you, and then force you to throw into that talented secondary that has so much depth to it, right? So it kind of goes with the game script of what they're trying to build on, right? Hopefully the pass rush can be as good as it was last year, before John Henry Daly got hurt, of course, and now he's off to Michigan. But when you look at the secondary and the way that it plays complementary football to this offense and the ball control they want to play with, I think it is a really good unit and a very important part of this team.
Is it top three secondary in the Big 12? I think BYU jumps to my mind. I think Tech's good back there. I think that's a comparable one. Like, I'm curious to see. I know TCU has a pretty good back end too. Arizona last year was great, but they lost all their guys, so we got to see how that shakes out. Would you say it's a top three secondary in the Big 12, or is it borderline?
I think it's close. If it's not 3, in my head, it's probably 4, maybe 5, because Texas Tech, I think, is number 1. They have the most complete unit. Okay. BYU's got 2 absolute studs. And then there's a second group of probably Houston, Utah, and TCU. They're certainly top 5. I would probably argue I think you could argue them up to number 3, but Houston and TCU are 2 teams in those units that I really like as well.
That's fair. And it's the Tech thing is always just crazy because, like, everywhere you look, they're like stacked. That's why I forgot they have some good dudes in the secondary too. And I'm just curious to see how they'll do this year. We might touch more on them later on. We're feeling good about the back end, and that's huge for Utah because what do they want to do? Get you and stop the run, get you in 3rd and long, and they're going to play man-to-man on the outside, and they're going to send all types of crazy blitzes your way. But in order to get teams in 3rd and long, run defense has to be better. Did struggle down the stretch last year in the regular season. Better against Nebraska. It was a really bad Nebraska team. So I think there's still questions about how this unit's going to do and perform. I've been encouraged seeing the defensive tackles up close. Guys look bigger. They look stronger. It's actually, Dalton, been my biggest question because I'm feeling decent about the offensive line. Yes, it's all new 5 starters, so there's going to be big questions there. But a lot of those guys at least returned in terms of the limited snap time they played. Got to prove it as starters, but I just feel like a lot of those guys are ready to be Power 4 starter. I don't know if I feel the same way at defensive tackle. And that's where, to me, I'm curious to see how they'll do. I feel good about D-end. I think Lance Holtzclaw's in a good year. Cash Dillon's a guy I like. And Ethan Day from North Texas has earned a lot of buzz throughout fall camp. And I like the linebackers. Jonathan Hall, Cyrus Polu, Elijah Ellis is in there too. And then Trey Reynolds. That's who I was getting to. Trey Reynolds as well. Solid last year. Solid guys. I think this unit can be better. I don't know if it will be one of the best front sevens in the Big 12, but I think they can be solid. How do you view Utah's front seven right now?
I think it's really something that's going to work. You mentioned Holtzclaw and Day off the edge. I think it's really something that you want to work, to be able to work outside in, right? Day is a fundamentally sound player, heavy-handed player who can play on the run, showed that in North Texas last year. And Holtzclaw obviously has gotten a lot of praise from Morgan Scalley lately. Those are two guys that have to step up, right? Because if you can at least keep contained and you're solid on the edge, then you talk about just funneling everything back inside and playing team football. I'm with you. There's definitely talent at linebacker. There might be a little bit of inexperience and weakness in there at defensive tackle, but if you play things right around those guys and they can just hold their gaps relatively firm, then that problem is a little less magnified, right? So I really think it's just going to be about playing team football up front. We know Morgan Scalley likes to get aggressive on defense, even in the run game, and to me, it's just going to be a matter of first and foremost, those two edge guys, Holtzclaw and Day, keeping containing, funneling everything back inside.
Yeah, that's where Holtzclaw has to get stronger. I think I liked what I saw from him as a pass rusher down the stretch, and he has gotten bigger. So we'll see how he does setting that edge on the outside. Looking at the linebacker group for this Utah team, how do you view Jonathan Hall? I really like Jonathan Hall, all honorable mention last year. I just still feel like ever since he's moved from safety to linebacker, he was feeling the position at times, would sometimes get lost, would still miss a tackle or two. But overall, I do think he's a pretty good player. And Dalton, now that it is his third year as a linebacker, I think this is when he puts it all together. I think he's going to have a really good season. And I like a Trey Reynolds next to him. I think that's just solid, like Jimmy's and Joe's guys. Like, he's just solid. He's going to do his job. Cyrus Polu has earned a lot of buzz too. I think the sophomore, he's ready for a bigger role too. How do you view this Utah linebacker room right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, especially in the case of Hall, it's always hard to switch positions, right? Because even just going from safety to linebacker, some people might think, okay, you're still in the middle of the defense. It should all look the same. Yeah. It does not look the same. You move up maybe that 4-yard space and nothing looks the same at all, and everything happens so fast in those confined spaces. But he is a really good run defender. I think as a unit, you mentioned, guys like Reynolds and obviously Polu. I think they're going to be really good in run defense. I do. I think especially with Hall as the leader now in his second year at the position, that can be a weapon for you. And again, the ability to support that defensive line, all those D tackles especially have to do is keep these guys free. And I think they have the speed to get where they need to go. Coverage is the bigger question for me, right? Jonathan Hall was used a lot as a blitzer last year, 23 pressures, the speed plays as a blitzer, but got to be able to cover the middle of the field, right? They can't play man-to-man coverage all the time. When you get in those zone coverage looks, your linebackers have to be sound in their spacing and their depth and just the awareness of route concepts in front of them. I think that's something that unit could really work on this year, where you're going to have moments where, look, you got to send 4, you're going to sit back in zone coverage, and you really got to keep things in front of you and prevent big throws to the intermediate parts of the field. That's where these linebackers are going to have to really work on it throughout the season.
Yeah, they will. I absolutely agree with that there. Top 10 Big 12 front seven. Can we give them that? What would you say?
Top 10, probably. There's some units I got a lot of questions on, especially down near the bottom. I would give it top 10. I don't know if it's one of the elite units. I think Texas Tech, again, is by far number one when it comes to that. Kansas State's got a good one. TCU's got a good one. Top 10 for sure. I would say there's some teams at the bottom I have some major questions about.
I think there's teams like Utah, and I know they lost a lot on offense, and we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball in a moment. But with the coaching and the tradition, I just think some teams deserve the benefit of the doubt. And that we do this with Alabama, Georgia, when they lose talent. I think Utah is one of those teams, right? With even though Colton Swan stepping in as the DC from Morgan Scalley, like Sharif Shaw is one of the best defensive back coaches I genuinely think in the country. I think Utah has done a good job developing and upgrading their defensive lines. It's not like year after year, and even last year, like, yes, the run defense finished bottom 3, but Utah won 11 games. So they were still finding ways to win. And the pass defense was phenomenal. So they were still doing a lot of good things. I expect this defense to do a lot of good things. I expect them to be better against the run. I just trust the coaches to fix this. But on the offensive side of the ball, there's some new coaches. So how is this going to look? How is the Utah's offense shaping up? We're diving into that next with Dalton on Locked On Utes. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. If you think Utah, whether that's your college team, wherever your college team is, or as well as your NFL team, is going to make the playoff this season, you can head over to Kalshi right now and trade their probability, meaning you can even trade $100, which would pay out big as well, too, if they clinch a playoff spot. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in the live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON, it's all caps, no spaces, to get $10 when you trade $10 on Kalshi. That's Kalshi. Trade on everything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory today. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. Dalton Wasserman back with me here. Dalton, how you feeling about this Utah offense? I feel like this unit is going to be good. They averaged 41 points per game last year. They do not have a dominant offensive line this year. They're going to take a step back. But I still expect them to get over 30 points per game. When you look at a Devin Dampier, I think the running back room is really exciting. The offensive line has some pieces that need to prove they can start, but it's guys who've been waiting, and they are a lot of like 6th and 7th year guys, even Dalton, who I feel like can still be good. Not great, but good. And the wide receiver core is as exciting as it's been in a long time. What's your overview of this Utah offense entering the season?
I mean, the ceiling of it is going to be decided by the offensive line and the chemistry that they gain throughout the year. But I think you look at this group of skill players, it's really encouraging. You've got two quarterbacks who are weapons in Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, and we'll see if Coach McGivens is going to use Ficklin in the same way that Jason Beck did last year, because he is certainly a weapon. You don't just leave an athlete like that on your bench all the time, right? Wayshawn Parker is one of the best backs in the Big 12, and I think an underrated part is this receiving core. I think these two transfers, Kyrie Scholes and Braden Pagan, I think they can make a huge impact on this offense. To me, this is a deeper wide receiving core than you had last year. You throw those guys in with Larry Simmons, who showed he could be a big play threat towards the end of last year as well. There's a chance that this offense is dynamic. And even if the offensive line goes back towards average from the greatness that we saw the last couple of years, Devin Dampier, obviously with his legs, is a guy who is certainly able to handle pressure, right? And there's not a ton of great pass rush teams in the Big 12. You're not playing Texas Tech this year. So Devin Dampier and his ability to create and the ability for this run game to still be the center of this offense is going to be big. And one thing I like about Coach McGivens as well, watching his past tape with Utah State, he lets his quarterback be himself. And that's really what you want to do with Devin Dampier. Let him be an athlete. Let him be himself. Let him improvise. There's times when it can be a little bit of a roller coaster, and you're watching these 12, 15, 17-second plays develop, and he takes some hits he shouldn't, but you take the upside that comes with Dampier as well. So there's a lot of potential. It could be an electric offense once again, and the offensive line building that down-to-down ceiling throughout the early parts of the season, that could really determine the rest of their year.
I understand when people say Utah lost all 5 offensive linemen. Why are they ranked in the top 25? I think what I would say is there's things about Utah's offensive line, though, that I do think it has a chance to be better than most offensive lines who lose all 5 starters. When you look at who's going to be starting for Utah, I expect it to be Zero Williams. It's a 6-year offensive lineman who's been playing behind Spencer Fano, and in his lone start in Nebraska, did look good. And we said it's a bad Nebraska team, but that's what you want to do against a bad team. You want to be dominant, and Utah's offense didn't miss a beat with him in. Keith Olson was on the other side. That's another guy I expect to start. Moliai is the extra offensive lineman they used a lot last year. He's got a good shot to start. Alex Harrison, Williams is in his 6th year. Alex Harrison, Dalton, is going into his 7th year. This is a grown man. He is huge. I feel, and there's another spot for grabs, but there's a former 4-star Utah too, Isaiah Garcia. I think he could be good. He's really the only guy that I'm like, okay, we haven't seen you play. These guys have to prove they can start. But I would rather Utah have this group of veteran offensive linemen who've been trained and developed by Jim Harding, and now it's former Carolina Panther legend Jordan Gross, who's just got to help them take that next step, rather than it's a bunch of G6 guys that have to prove they're ready for Power 4 football. I don't feel like that's what Utah has. And sure, Cedric Jefferson may start from Montana State. We'll see how that goes. But there's a lot of these guys that have been waiting, buying their time, and the limited snaps we've seen, they've looked capable of being Power 4 offensive linemen. To me, I don't think this is going to be one of the 3 best offensive lines in college football. I think they have a shot to be one of the 5 best offensive lines in the Big 12, though. What say you to that?
I think it's entirely possible. And look, at Big 12 offensive lines, there aren't many great ones. I would throw Texas Tech and BYU in that mix. And then otherwise, as far as the rest of the units in the conference, it's kind of a crapshoot, right? So I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world to say outright. Cincinnati's the other one I would throw in the top three. Yeah. But I would say from 4 onward, wide open, absolutely wide open. Yeah. And when you look at what you just mentioned, losing so many starters, but it is not a team full of transfers, right? It's really just Cedric Jefferson with the shot to start there at right tackle, who's really the big name transfer in from Montana State. But the rest of those guys, even if it's a new offensive system, they're familiar with the communication. They're familiar with each other. And Jason Beck did not run some simple offense, especially in the run game. There was a lot to learn. And those years of experience under him, especially the last couple of years, that plays a big part in it, right? When you go, okay, we know how to do all of these things. Now we just need reps, right? We might be older guys and we just need reps with each other, especially, but I think they can get that done. Look, are they going to be as good as last year? I would highly, highly doubt it. Obviously, you had 2 first-round picks and some other really good players on the interior, but to sit here and think going into the season that, they have enough experience. They also, like you mentioned, benefit of the doubt. Utah's just one of those programs that almost always has a good offensive line. You trust that, right? You trust Jordan Gross and the coaching staff and everything going on that side of the ball. So is there a world where maybe they're the 4th best offensive line in the Big 12? I think it could happen. I think there's a world where it could. If they are, they're going to win closer to 9 or 10 games and be in the playoff hunt in the Big 12. If they're that good, is there a world where they're closer to average? Yeah, so be it. But again, we talked about they have the quarterback and the skill players that can at least make up for an average offensive line, and they can still be okay. They just need to not be awful, and I think they'll be fine.
I'm really excited for Devin Dampier this year, Dalton. When you look at the sports hernia injury last year and how that derailed him, and yes, he was playing behind an awesome offensive line, so that's where there will be more on his back. But that ability to scramble and keep plays alive, that was really taken away from him last year. He just didn't do that a ton. As long as Utah keeps him healthy, and he's not the biggest guy, it's a big if. I think you really want to limit how much he runs between the tackles in order to try to keep him healthy. I think he has a chance to have a special season. I view him coming into the season as the 2nd best quarterback in the Big 12. I have Fafita 1, then him. I understand people might put Mestamaker up there. I want to see it on a Power 4 sample size, especially with how he performed in some of his biggest games last year. I think he can be special, and I think he is capable of carrying this Utah team, getting them to a Big 12 championship. What are your thoughts on Dampier going into the year, and where does he rank amongst Big 12 quarterbacks for you?
I agree. I have him 3rd, but when you talk about even the top 4 guys, and Max and I ranked all 68 starting quarterbacks in the Power 4, at least projected. We had him and Bachmeier. He was 15th. We had Dampier 15 and Bachmeier 16. So we got you guys 1 spot ahead of the actual rivalry there. But no, I mean, we put Fafita and Mestamaker ahead of him, but not by very much by any means. It's really a packed group, but I think that's really the elite class of quarterbacks right now, at least proven guys at the Power 4 level. And Dampier, look, he got better as a drop back passer. I thought there was a little more rhythm than the way that he's used to playing. Now he's still a dynamic athlete, and that's really the part that scares you the most is his legs and the ability to scramble and create plays and break tackles and then just make explosive plays almost out of nothing, right? And he's a huge factor in the run game as well. But the one thing I would like to see from him is just take less hits, right? I know you're trying to make every play and break every tackle and score every time. Just take a few less hits per game because I don't want to have to worry about you, right? And I like Bird Ficklin. He's an electric athlete. And I think Ficklin is a guy who could alleviate that. I think Coach McGibbon should really give Ficklin still 6 to 8 to 10 touches a game because he's an electric playmaker too and get creative with this offense. But Dampier got a lot better as a passer last year. I think this time's under pressure where things can be a bit of a roller coaster, obviously, because that's just his style of play. But you live with that again. And you talk about one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in college football. That's what you have.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And the backup, as you mentioned, too, is pretty fun and exciting as well. You mentioned you're really excited for this Utah skill position group. I think this running back room can be one of the better ones in the Big 12. When you look at Wayshawn, I think he's got a really good shot to be a top 3 back in this conference. I know that will be tough with LJ Martin, Cam Cook coming up too. But only Jeremiah Love amongst Power 4 backs with a similar volume of carries averaged more yards per carry than Wayshawn did last year. I think he's in for a big year too. I like Daniel Bray. I like Steven Chavez Soto. I just think that's a fun top 3. And you just mentioned the amount of guys in this wide receiver room. I have no idea what tight end's going to look like. I think Hunter Andrews is the top guy there. He looked fine before an injury, so we'll see what he's capable of too. But it feels like the overall talent in this Utah skill position group, from wide receiver, tight end to including running back, those 3 combined is as good as it's been in some time up on the hill.
Yeah, I would agree. That running back room, especially, I think one of the keys is going to be for either Daniel Bray or Chavez Soto to really step up as just that second guy. Because one of the fun parts of Wayshawn Parker's game is that you can line him up anywhere, right? You can line him up at receiver. You can get him out going on routes wherever you want to. You can get the jet sweeps going, and that adds so much more to the offense as well. Just the depth and the layering of this run game that makes Utah so difficult to defend. Parker's flexibility is also a huge part of that. And any way you can get him out in space is great. I think there's going to be sets. You saw it a little bit last year. There should be sets where two of those running backs, Parker and one other one, are on the field at the same time. So Parker has the versatility to move around. The more depth that you have as far as playmakers, the more creative you can get with them. But their run game, you look at their quarterbacks, you look at the depth in the running back room, it should be somewhat elite again, right? The offensive line might determine some things between the tackles, but they're so good at getting outside. If Coach McGivens can just keep the creativity going, some of it that Jason Beck had, you can do a lot of different things with these players, man. It's a really good depth of offensive talent.
It's an exciting group. Where do they rank among some of the other offenses in the Big 12, though? And also, just where should Utah be ranked in the preseason? We give our takes next on Locked On Utes. I think Utah has a good shot to have a top 7, maybe even a top 5 offense again in the Big 12. Dalton. Going to be questions until that offensive line proves it. Where do you think this offense will end up by the end of the year when we say this was a blank offense in the Big 12?
This is a really good question, I think, because Texas, look at the teams that are really good on offense that I think are going to be, again, Texas Tech, BYU, Houston, Oklahoma State's got weapons out the wazoo, man. With what Eric Morris brought into that team, a lot of it with them from North Texas. Well, I'm really curious to see what Kansas State does with Colin Klein. I think Utah has the potential. I think Texas Tech, even with their quarterback questions, is probably still going to be the best offense. They're just so loaded with everything. But I think there's a lot of teams, Oklahoma State, Houston, BYU, Utah, that are contending for second, and it's just going to be a strong race. I think the top 7 or 8 offenses in this conference are really, really good, and there might even be some sleepers in there, right? If Julian Lewis develops for Colorado, who knows what West Virginia can get going. I don't mind West Virginia's run game with Cam Cook in there, the nation's leading rusher, but I think when you talk about Utah, it's probably a top 6 or 7 unit at the very least. And I think you're talking about a lot of contenders that at the end of the year, you could go, yeah, this is the second best offense. And whoever is the second best offense might well be the team that, to me, is playing against Texas Tech in that Big 12 title game.
I totally agree. That's where it just gets so interesting when you look at the offseason and the way the college football offseason now shakes out. So many transfers. So there's massive question marks that every single team has. Even Houston has 3 new offensive linemen up front. And I like Connor Wigman, but can he take the next step? I think that's fair to wonder, just like it's fair to wonder how Utah's offensive line shakes out to be. Speaking of Houston, Utah, BYU, Texas Tech, those are the 4 teams that are almost always ranked inside the top 25 of the Big 12, with Utah usually ahead of Houston, about 20, 21, somewhere in there. I personally, Dalton, would have Utah over Tennessee for the simple fact that Utah knows who their starting quarterback is going to be. And I just feel like if you still have quarterback questions, I think you could at least get moved down a little bit, especially with the Vols season going off the rails a little bit last year. Still a solid team, but when we just don't even know your quarterback is, that's the one thing I'd maybe have Utah 1 spot up. But I feel like this is an extremely fair range to have this team with the questions in the trenches they do, along with the new head coach, Morgan Scalley. I feel like Utah's relatively fairly rated in the AP poll for preseason purposes. What say you?
Yeah, I think anywhere to me from 20 to 30, I think there's a lot of teams of very similar caliber. Now, Max and I on Preferred Walk-On, we ranked all 68 teams. We put Utah at number 30. There's kind of this big cluster of this big cluster of Big 12 teams. I think TCU, Arizona's a lot of them that are just right in that same mix. We did put Tennessee at 23. I do like their football team. It is the quarterback situation, though. It's the big question. But I think you have a lot of movement that can happen in this, like, between 18 and 20 down to 30 or even 35 sort of range, where a lot of these teams are a very, very similar caliber. And I think head to head, they could beat each other on any given day. For me with Utah, it's really just about, it's the trenches, right? I love their offensive skill talent. It's just the trenches. Where is this offensive line going to be by midseason? Where's this defensive line going to be by midseason? Like we've talked about, would not shock me at all. Look, if all of those things work, they could be top 15. They could be top 2 or 3 in the Big 12. They could be in the playoff race like they were last year. So I think there's just a wider range for Utah a little bit, on the low end this year, but they can get there. The ceiling is probably pretty similar to last year. They can be in playoff contention. We left them at 30 right now. We're a little more conservative than where they were in the low 20s, but definitely thought about them. They were a borderline top. There was a lot of teams that were like borderline top 25, and who's going to get over that line? It was close.
Yeah, and as much as I have confidence in Utah's trenches being solid, the fact is true. Utah lost all 9 starters in the trenches. I understand why people don't have them ranked in the top 25. And Kyle Whittingham, who there's usually a learning curve for first-year head coaches. And I think there will be some for Morgan Scalley. This is just where I think Utah is incredibly fortunate with the schedule they have. I mean, if they had to go to the Razorbacks week 1, I'd be really concerned. If they had to go to TCU, to Arizona even earlier. And I my schedule predictions, I even have those as losses right now to Utah. But those are the types of games where if it's even earlier in the season, I'm more concerned. I think the first 6 weeks of Utah's schedule gives them a great opportunity to figure things out before they see their first true top 25 test to me in Houston. And yeah, there's some other trap games littered throughout there, but I feel like the Utes have a really good shot at being a 10-2 Big 12 contender caliber team this year. What do you make of Utah's schedule, record prediction, and how do you think the first year of the Morgan Scalley era is going to go in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, it's very tough because I'm more conservative when it comes to their team and the things that I need to see before I consider them maybe, for a Big 12 title game spot or something like that. But then I look at their schedule and I'm with you. Then I look at it and I go, 6-0 is entirely possible to start the season, right? I ended up with them at 8-4 in my predictions. I originally had them 9-3, and I was tweaking some things because I was like, once I went through it, I was like, man, I think you could argue them as a favorite in 9-10 of these games. I mean, and then you look at their 2 toughest games to me. You get Houston, at least team-wise. You get Houston, you get BYU. You get them both at home, right? The TCU and Arizona road trips at the end of the year might decide the entire fate anyway, but you avoid Texas Tech. Your big out-of-conference game is Arkansas, but I personally, right now, I think they're the worst team in the SEC, and you get them at home. You get your 2 toughest conference opponents at home. There's a lot working in their favor, and you mentioned it, that runway to potentially start 6-0 if they can pull that off. If they do it, they're playing really good football, but they have a runway to get there. Then you get Houston at home. Then you really start talking about positioning yourself within this conference with that stretch run, because a lot of those teams, Arizona, TCU, Houston, BYU, those are the prime Big 12 contenders to me for second place. I think Texas Tech is in a category of their own, but you get to decide it with these head-to-head matchups, and you get a lot of the important ones at home.
That's what's exciting. Where are the 4 losses for you right now with Utah? As I mentioned, I go TCU and Arizona are my 2 losses. I understand it. People have the BYU one as a loss. In Houston, there's a lot of ones you could see. Upsets happen all the time. For me, I just think this is the year Utah gets BYU being at home. They almost did it with Brandon Rose a couple of years ago. I think it's the year the Utes get the Cougars. But where are those 4 losses to you right now?
I forget where I put the 4 because I ran it through the simulator a few weeks ago. We were doing our Big 12 preview. I think TCU and Arizona were both on there as well. I might have done Houston also. I really like what Willie Fritz has going there. I think that's a team that was right. To me, they were ranked too low in the AP poll as well. I think they should have been higher as well. I forget where I put the 4th one. I think I just I was like playing with the chaos a little bit, and I threw a 4th one in there. But I mean, and it was hard. It was hard to knock them down to that because originally I was like, this schedule should make this team a 9 or 10 win team if it all works. I'm with you on that, right? And I was kind of messing with the chaos of the Big 12 and just kind of trying to even things out. But no, I mean, there's a potential here. I think, again, if they do get off to a 6-0 or even a 5-1 start, which to me, I'm with you. I would favor them in their first 6 games. They get off to a 6-0 start. It's going to be pretty hard for them to go 8-4 all of a sudden. They'd really have to fall apart at that point.
There's a world they're favored in every game this season. Do I think that happens? No. I think TCU and Arizona both end up being pretty good. There's a world they could be favored in every game because they don't have the at BYU. They don't have an at Texas. They don't have a neutral site with Miami. All those things happen next year. They won't be favored in those games next year. But this year, that's where it does shake out in their favor. Even if, to me, like last year's Utah team would have had a chance to go 12-0 with this type of a schedule. To me, you get a little worse in the trenches. You could still go 10-2. 8-4 could absolutely happen as well. You know what? Really quick, big, broad Big 12 question for you. I view Kenny Dillingham as the best coach in the Big 12 with what he's done at Arizona State these last 2 years. I think he's been tremendous. Who do you as the best coach in the Big 12?
It's close. We also did coach rankings earlier this offseason. We went with Kalani Sitake. But I mean, there's some really good. Joey McGuire at Texas Tech is doing an unreal job as well. Kenny Dillingham is awesome. I mean, there's so many great answers to this question, right? I would go Kalani Sitake. I know the people on your channel hate to hear that one, but he's spectacular. Especially you look at what he's done the last couple of years. What is it, 23-6? I think it is the last 2 years, something in the 22-6.
Maybe even 4. Might be 4. Might be only like 2 losses.
You've got just some outstanding. I think those are some of the most fun battles. You've got some outstanding coaches when you look at, McGuire, Sitake, Willie Fritz at Houston is an unreal coach, man. The work he did at Tulane and at Houston, obviously Morgan Scalley in his first year as a head coach, but he's got a long track record as a DC. Sonny Dykes, right? I love the Kenny Dillingham, like you mentioned. Rich Rodriguez, we can't forget about either. So, I mean, there's a lot of good candidates. I'll lean in on Sitake for now, but Joey McGuire's nipping right at his heels. I'll tell you that.
It'll be fun to see where Morgan Scalley ranks after this year, too. If he does lead the team to a 10-2 type season, does he get in that top 5 discussion? Those are the type of things that we'll be having depending on how it all shakes out for Utah. Fun season on deck for sure. Dalton, always great having you on. Please let people where they need to head over to if they want more college football talk.
Absolutely, JT. Preferred Walk-On YouTube. If you were subscribed to the PFF College Football Show before, you are good. We just changed the name and the look of it, but it's all good. We're solo now, Preferred Walk-On, and we're getting our Week 0 preview going on Tuesday. It's going to be so much fun. My favorite episodes of the year are when we just get to go in, break down these games, and predict every single one of them. And surely we're going to have plenty of Utah action this year on our show.
Awesome, Dalton. Appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it as always, JT. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you soon talking the latest in Utah athletics.